Hey everybody, welcome to Raising Vibrations, and in this video I'm going to be jamming the new moon in Capricorn with you. Very excited for this. Lots to share, lots to talk about, and I really hope that you will find value in this video. Now, as you can see, got a bit of a different background. I'm in the process of moving at the moment, so we're going to have to deal with these grey walls for the meantime. So let's get straight into this video today with us. There's lots to talk about, as I said. This is the trajectory or the roadmap itself. I'm going to be talking about the Capricorn archetype and particularly looking at the movie Slumberland, which is something that I think was released last year. I highly encourage you to go watch this film, like really go watch this film if you want to get a sense of what this new moon is about, as well as what is the role, the function of Capricorn, and how do we go through Capricorn experiences within our consciousness, right? What are the types of stories that we live out when we've got Capricorn planets or there are transits in Capricorn? And so there you've got like a healing Saturn Capricorn archetype. I want to touch base on that. Then I want to talk about the fear of the future and disruption. That's Uranus on the South Node, or Uranus in conjunct in the South Node. And this is very exciting for me because it's like the horror of the unexpected, right? And then I want to talk about Chiron, the nodes, and the new moon. And we're talking about fear, preparedness, and attention, right? How does this Chiron really supporting us at the moment, or supporting all of us to come into deeper insight and wisdom when it comes to the human condition. Okay, so that's kind of the trajectory, and I'll be showing some charts out as well. Now, let's circle back to Capricorn archetype Slumberland. I can't help but push and encourage you to go watch this film. Please do. Because when I stood back and I kind of reflected on the arc of the story, the roles that the characters played within it, I was like, gosh, this is the type of messaging and understanding that is required to help us reshape Capricorn in our current sort of understanding of the Capricorn archetype, and also decondition ourselves from the crystallized, very disconnected Saturn image or symbol that we have internally within ourselves and our consciousness and the way that we perceive it and see it. So for those of you that haven't watched it, I'm going to talk a little bit about this just so that when you go and watch it, you can see the things I'm talking about, okay? Again, this new moon in Capricorn, the Capricorn archetype, the way that we go through Capricorn experiences, I felt was deeply embedded in this story. Like, for instance, the lighthouse. For any of you know, in my sort of legacy videos, earlier videos that I've created, I often use the symbol or the image of a lighthouse when it comes to Capricorn. And that is simply because the Capricorn archetype itself has to do with, like, where are we in relation to where we're going? What is the arc of development within our consciousness? What's the story? And it also speaks to where we can feel anchored within ourselves and how we can weather storms, right? Oftentimes lighthouses are in what location? So lighthouse symbolizes is a very strong Capricorn kind of signature. And there's even a moment between the daughter and the dad where he says to her, you know, if you understand or figure out the purpose of the lighthouse, right? That is the question for each of us in this new moon in Capricorn, right? That's Chiron's kind of speaking to us, saying, if you figure out the purpose of the lighthouse, I'll give you the keys to it, right? So go watch the film and see how that arc develops within the story and the realization she comes to. There's another character that takes over. There's another character in the film, another man who lives in an environment that is almost parallel to an opposite actually to the other father figure. So there's two father figures in the film, right? The first one you meet, and then later on you meet another father figure. And he lives in the classic Saturnian world that we have found ourselves within. And one of them is connected to the inner child, meaning, purpose, joy, fulfillment, understanding, humanness, sentientness, to be emotionally here, to feel humanness. And the other one is very much discombobulated, like a disconnect, a distancing. There's a distancing in the second archetype. And the story essentially leads you to witness this man that has been disconnected to return, to reclaim his lost part, his lost self. And that journey that he goes on, the realizations he goes on, as well as what the daughter and the child has to go through and what she has to confront, those two stories over there are very much the arc of healing Saturn in our collective psyche and internally for us, individually for us. And there's a tenderness that is so essential and so important when it comes to understanding our Saturn in our chart and healing our Saturn work. And for this new moon in Capricorn, the story, the end of the story, speaks to the journey that each of us has been going on, or that we have been going on as a collective, but each of us have been going on individually over the last sort of 15 years with Pluto in Capricorn. And now we're reaching that 29-degree mark, and we have Pluto, sorry, not Pluto, but the Sun and the Moon sitting at 20 degrees of Capricorn, exactly squaring the nodes, right? Which again, I'll show you the charts of it. It's like, this is it. This is kind of like the final play before we move on to Aquarius themes. And you have to bring in the mastery of this Capricorn story into the Aquarius age. That's what I've been kind of talking about in previous videos that I've been sharing, is what does it look like to step into the Aquarian age when you've mastered Capricorn themes? And this film towards the end, and the journey that these characters go on, symbolizes that arc of transformation in there. Okay, so I highly encourage you to go check that out. All right, so if we come back to the second piece over here, which is like the fear of the future and disruption. It's like Uranus on the south node and the horror of the unexpected. Right? So if we go over here and we look at the chart, let's just click this. There we go. There's the movie Slumberland. Beautiful little moon in the background over there. And this arc, this journey, and you notice that that water plays an important role, right? Symbolizing, in the case of this conversation, Capricorn energy, the going into the depths of the unconscious, going into the subconscious, going into the parts of ourselves that are non-physical, to explore what is behind the scenes and what is lying behind the scenes, and how that informs our waking self, right? And so this is kind of a pointing towards the necessity to integrate this Cancerian piece, which is the polarity of Capricorn, into the Capricorn structure of our physical nature, and letting that being guided. And you need to do that inner work, right? That inner emotional transformational work. So that's the film, by the way. That's what it looks like. Okay, so if we take a look at the charts at the moment, this is the new moon itself. And you can see there, right there, it's Capricorn sitting at Sun Moon, 29 degrees, Capricorn, 29 degrees. The Plutos are 29 degrees, the Sun and Moons are 20, and then you've got this 20-degree nodal axis here, right? So this is like, boom, this is it. If you're an evolutionary astrologer and you look at the symbolism, you go, oh, this is an exact square. The resolution is needing to happen now. Do you know what I mean? And that's why I think that film was just so potent when it showed up in my field, because it was like, aha, this is kind of the arc of development that this square is talking about, right? So this is what it looks like there. You can see Neptune squaring Venus and Mercury in this chart over here, very much a Sagittarius theme. Just notice that Mercury and Venus are being influenced by Jupiter, because Jupiter is the archetype associated with Sagittarius, and Venus is the planet associated with Taurus. So you have kind of what is called like a bouncing polarity there between these two. So you've got Jupiter in Taurus, you've got Venus in Sagittarius. Venus influences Taurus. Sagittarius is influenced by Jupiter, so you've got a bouncing theme there. And then again, to take this one step further, the archetype of Venus, the planet Venus, is the natural ruler of the South Node. So we can absolutely begin to deduce that if you want to understand the South Node, you need to understand the symbolism between these two planets over here, okay? And again, this is very specific. It's an underlying sort of the planetary system with these activations. I'm just trying to think if I can kind of thread it together with what I was talking about earlier, or if I need to move to a different chart to do this instead. I think I'm going to move to a different chart to explain what I mean by this. But if I look to this chart over here first, so I'm going to do it in a kind of order and a context. Here's Uranus sitting at 19 degrees. It's about to go direct on the 27th of January, and it forms a blind spot to the south node. So when I talk about fear of the future and disruption, right now, this type of Uranus is not only accelerates us into the future, it brings us what is about the future, and sort of things like global conflicts, wars that are taking place, the threat of AI, all of these sort of background senses that things are sort of not stable anymore, right? That's Uranus and Taurus, and it's affecting the south node. And the trigger here in the south node with Uranus is the horror of the unexpected. So John Vervaeke did a fantastic conversation where he talks about he's talking about predictive processing, and what he's talking about here is that we can come into experiences where things are threaded together. We feel comfortable when things are together like this, right? This is kind of Capricorn. If things are continuous, things are the same, we can wake up, we can have expectations. So Libra says to us, what are the expectations? What are the familiarities? What are the things that are consistent and normal? What can I expect every day to be there? So we expect every day when we wake up, okay, the roads are going to work, the traffic lights are going to work, the internet's going to work, the phones are going to work, the food's going to be available. And that in conjunct to Uranus comes in and it says, yeah, but what happens if there are little cracks that appear? And what happens if the threading of the way that you make up the world and you map it, etc., starts to kind of show this sense of things being destabilized? And in different places in the world, there are degrees of destabilization, right? There's destabilization. And the more that we sort of become exposed to that destabilization, the more that it opens up this, like, peeks beyond the veil, and it says, is the way that everything's being said, like how it is that really true? And it's that moment of coming into the unthreading of consistent reality being familiar that starts to afford a state of, oh, okay, maybe I can start to get unsettled. Maybe there's an anxiety. And it's like, oh, I don't know what's actually going on, right? There's this continuous kind of sense that the future reflects an underlying, like, I don't know what's going on. I mean, this was very much what kind of happened during COVID times, when right at the beginning, right, there was a period of time where the kind of relationship to what was happening in terms of reality and life was, oh my God, like, we made plans to do this and now we can't do this, or I can't go and interact with that person, or I can't do this. So there was a destabilization that was beginning to occur, and then there was also an emergence of, is this really true? Can I really trust this? There seems to be odd things happening here. One minute something says this and the other thing says like that. Now what can I trust? And so it's kind of this progressive breaking away of what feels real in that sense is this south node Uranus in conjunct, and it's also trining the new moon in Capricorn. So there's this fear of the future, the sense that, well, what we've experienced has been pretty destabilizing, and all you need to do is just take your own reality, look out, and then fill in the context, right? Because the things that are happening in, say, China, for instance, are different for other countries, and so you just fill in the context of where you exist, but you will see that surrounding uncertainty, unpredictability, that horror of the unexpected, and then the future of, well, if it's unpredictable now, can I go back to something that's familiar, or can I restore something that feels stable, in that sense? So that's an affordance there. There's a real kind of growing sense that, I can feel that. I may not necessarily fully see it, but I can in some way. And it creates that instability. It's like, whoa, how can I navigate through this time? So if you look at this chart over here, I think maybe if I go to this one, because this is the one with the Jupiter I wanted to synthesize with Venus. I think I'll do this instead. So now if we look at this chart over here, right, we've got Chiron North Node squaring the Sun Moon, and then squaring the South Node, of course. So you've got this T-square that's happening here. And the Chiron on the North Node, the progressive kind of conjunction that's going to take place, along with the new moon in Capricorn, along with Pluto at 29 degrees, I talk about this in terms of like fear, preparedness, and attention, right? The shock of Uranus on the South Node says, are you paying attention? Up until now, everything was just 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1. It was okay. There's a recursiveness to our reality. We can afford, like, I can wake up and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, there's predictability to things. Now all of a sudden can I really trust the predictability? Can I really kind of put my hand in and say, this is what seems to occur the next day? Or hold on. I mean, what's going to happen next? And this is something that probably will be experienced at a more inflamed, heightened sense in a consensus reality with a lot of people that are, not necessarily as attuned to the nature of reality and the world itself. And so, we'll tend to be more in a fear state. The point here that I'm trying to make is that this Uranus in conjunction the South Node touching the Sun, Moon, and Capricorn, there is a shaking up, and it's creating a kind of cognitive orientation to say, maybe there are things beyond the boundary of what has been familiar and consistent that are existing. Can I cope with accepting that reality? What do I do in that reality? How do I orientate? So an interesting film that also recently came out, it was called Leave the World Behind, would be a great example, right? If you haven't watched that, I encourage you to do that as well, but take it with a grain of salt, right? Take it with a pinch of salt, right? It is still film in some sense, but the point that I'm trying to put across here is that every day there are predictables, every day there are predictions of behaviorisms that we'll do, and we'll follow, and we'll say, okay, we're building on, we're doing this, and then all of a sudden something comes along and it just changes the curve a little bit, and now that prediction process becomes less and less trustworthy. And so how do you orientate within that environment? So that's kind of the message here, from what I understand, feel and hear Chiron and Aries to be, is in a new context, in a new environment, in a new set of systems and dynamics, how do you navigate when the maps of meaning and the realities, the symbols, the signals that would say this is what ordinary looks like, becomes disjointed and dysregulated, right? And so it's like a new framing is required, and when something is being reframed, there is a period of destabilization. So how do you navigate within that destabilization? How do you allow yourself that alertness, that preparedness, to be able to say, okay, do I regress into a deeper limbic system response, which is just fear and panic? Or am I, in the case of the Capricorn 29 degree new moon in Capricorn energy, have I self-mastered, and I know where my weaknesses are, I know where my shadow dynamic is, I know how I can be manipulated, I know where my cognitive biases are, but I also know and trust my capacity to navigate and afford navigation with my senses in a world that progressively becomes even more predictably less stable. Right? That's this. This is like, it's Chiron literally saying there are ways, behaviorisms, things that you have to think about that you may have not thought about in a long time, that affords survivability, right? So if I go back to this chart over here, and do you notice Jupiter 5 degrees of Taurus, and then it squares Pluto? And I've done a video on Pluto square Jupiter. This is an opening square between these two planetary systems, by the way. And you'll notice there's also a sextile to Saturn. Okay, so you look at this chart over here. And then if we go back to this signature with this Venus that's ruled by the Jupiter, and the Jupiter ruled by the Venus. And then you notice the square between those signatures there. So if we had to look at it in terms of layers, we would see, okay, this is the new moon with the signature of emotional and spiritual mastery through understanding your fears and coming into contact with fears and recognizing that you have to overcome them in some way by moving through them. Like, that would be the message of this new moon. That's the message in the the Slumberland movie, right? And then there's a level of disorientation, antitrust, prediction errors occurring that affords the lack of security and internal familiarity that then leads to the potential for chaos and uncertainty and destabilization. And then there is, how do I respond in the context of these new maps that are emerging in our world? Like, for instance, if we haven't lived in a world with artificial intelligence for a long period of time, how does that look 10 years from now? What does that mean for me? What does it mean to live in a world where global powers have deep pathologies that create intense amounts of human suffering at the expense of power? And then you're also in a world where there's progressive instability around things like financial structuring, things like all different types of markets and institutions that are appearing less capable of dealing with complexity in a world, right? So it's like there's lots of layers that are kind of present at the moment, and they're all kind of in a musical instrument. I think it's what's the instrument that you do this with? It starts with a C. I know that somebody's going to write it in the comment section, and please do, by the way. Is it a concertina? A concertina? Concertina. Yeah, it must be a concertina. That's the word that comes to mind, at least. Either way, it's like they're all kind of interfacing with each other like this, and that vibration is creating that state. So here's my kind of 2 cents from this chart, right? If I kind of go back to this imagery here, where I go, okay, so Slumberland, healing Capricorn, is emerging into your own emotional field and processing your emotions and feelings, becoming consciously aware of the fears and the grips that hold you, that drive your unconscious, your choices. Okay, so mastering yourself. That leads you to having less manipulation when you project your power externally, or your power is external, because the fear of the future leads you to have to surrender your sense of agency, because the surrendering of the agency is, I need somebody to save me, or I need a government to come in and protect me, I need bigger powers, I need Jupiter to come save me. And so it's like there is progressive cracks opening in reality that afford horror, because it's unexpected patterns and sort of things that don't feel stable. So how do we then make choices when the limbic system is running a survival pattern? So how do you sort of deal with navigation? How do you navigate in states of disruption and fear of the future? And then Chiron comes in and says there's a need to understand the nature of fear itself, to understand the nature of what it is to be prepared. And that can look like educating yourself. That can look like being able to not be just on autopilot. That's coming into, and it's not like an extreme version of prepping where you just go and buy 300 billion packets of soup and pastas and stuff like that, and loads of toilet paper, and you bunker up. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about preparedness in the sense that, like, imagine if you were in an environment where you needed to navigate through the forest for a night. Like, what's the landscape like? At some points, every one of you that's watching this video has traveled, right? Or has gone someplace. And what you've done is you've got an itinerary, you've scoped the place out, you get a sense of where you're going, you've researched a little bit. Like, that's what I mean by preparedness. So it's like, where are you currently at the moment within your life? What skills do you have that can be utilized for freedom? So an example would be, like, learn to grow some food. Because if you learn how to grow food, you're not just learning how to grow food, you're learning you're developing your brain to do something more, you're expanding your skill set, you're exploring something, you're not just kind of like zonked out and distracted by TV, etc. But you're in a state of preparedness. You're teaching yourself that you're capable of handling disruption if it emerges, right? It's not like you're bound by something that can overpower you. And attention is pay attention, right? Notice where there are cracks in the matrix story, like where notice what is happening in the world. Pay attention to your surroundings, pay attention to conversations, pay attention to yourself, pay attention to your feelings and what is emerging for you. You may read something on the internet, for example, and notice yourself sort of getting, maybe there's a fear hijacking taking place, and ask yourself the question, well, what might that be? What is it that is causing me this fear reaction, as an example? So attention, paying attention, being alert, but not hypervigilant, right? We're not living in that kind of space, but there are places where this is existing. This is what I'm talking about, okay? So my summary is, go watch the film, because the arc of development of the characters, particularly the young girl and the second parent, right? They go through a transformational experience. What she has to go through to overcome her fears, what he has to go through. The role that, like, you'll notice that there are three main people: the girl, the sort of like imagined character, and then the real life stepdad or step parent that comes in. And what is the association with all three of them? That is this new moon in terms of emotional transformation that we're affording at this point in time. And then, as I said again, like becoming conscious of the fact that yes, there are shakeups taking place. There requires a new set of belief systems. That's the Jupiter square Pluto, South Node, Venus signature that I was talking about. That's like broadening perspective, breaking out of traditional ideas, affording new ways of paying attention, learning a new skill set, or asking yourself, where can I invest in myself and resources that I can carry that cannot be taken away from me, as an example. These are ways that you can strengthen your lighthouse internally for yourself, so that you can navigate life with more inner strength, preparedness, and alertness, okay? All right, my friends, thanks very much for listening to this video. I really hope that you got a lot of value from it. I would love to hear and see your comments in this video as well, and read them out. And until the next video, take care. Bye-bye.